All right, guys. Very excited. Speak to Raunaq. All right, let's talk about Roam. Or maybe first you could describe a little bit about your background. I think that's probably pretty helpful in understanding what you guys are doing at Roam.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for having me here, Pomp. My name is Raunaq. I say it like ironic without the I. I learned that by going to Starbucks in high school. So our company is called Roam. We help people buy a home with the seller's low rate mortgage included. So the reason I got involved with all this stuff is about 7, 8 years ago, I worked at a company called Opendoor, which y'all just heard from Kaz earlier today. And when I worked at Opendoor, I started in the mortgage division. And we were just starting the business. And I was like, I'd love to get involved. And they were like, great, we need someone to pick up the phones around here. So I became the first loan officer. And I actually helped close the first 100 transactions at Opendoor. And so what I grew to love about mortgages is it's functionally interesting to help people line up their personal P&Ls. And emotionally, you're helping people through what is the most invasive and intrusive experience they're ever going to go through. So you have a formative ability to make a deep impact on their life. And as rates went from 2% to 7%, we saw that millions of sellers were on the sidelines because they had cheap mortgages, and 75 million Americans were priced out because of where rates and home prices had ended up. And I did something nobody else ever does. I read the contracts, and I found out that 1 of 3 mortgages in America are fully transferable from the seller to the buyer, and in the process, the seller is released from all liability, and the buyer gets to take over the seller's monthly payment. And so we built a whole company around it. So you can see, there's $1.5 trillion mortgages at an average rate of 3% that are fully transferable from the seller to the buyer. Typical buyers saves about $1,000 a month over the next 12 months, over the next 27 years. And their gross savings exceed $250,000, and the typical seller gets an additional $25,000 for including their mortgage with their home sale. So in a nutshell, that's our company, and yesterday at earnings, we announced a partnership with Opendoor to give 1 of 3 sellers who come to Opendoor the ability to list their home and get a premium for their sale.
So just so people understand this, if I have a home, and let's say I've got a 3% mortgage, obviously mortgage rates are not at 3% today, I can actually sell you my home, and rather than you have to go get a new mortgage, you can just take over my mortgage, and now you get a 3% mortgage because that's what I had, and you're likely to pay me more for my home because it's not just the home you're buying the home plus a 3% mortgage.
Yeah, and I think that is an interesting tidbit about consumer psychology. I'm sure in your own lives you felt the experience of knowing something you have to be valuable, but not feeling like other people appreciate it. So that's why it's so psychologically valuable to go to a homeowner and say, Anthony, I know you have a 3% rate. I know you think that was a financially savvy decision, and I'm here for the first time to tell you you can actually get value out of it. And that's really powerful, and that person will want to work with you. So the seller is able to differentiate their home sale by including their low-rate mortgage. Why? Because it ends up making their home the only one in the neighborhood that you can afford.
Now, we talked to Bill Pulte earlier today, Director of Federal Housing. You've told me in the past that there is a potential path to Pulte, if he made it the law, I guess, or he decreed it, every single mortgage in America could become assumable. So it's not 1 in 3, it'd be 100%.
Yeah, so the way to think about the opportunity here is U.S. residential real estate, there's about $14 trillion of mortgages, $9 trillion of which was originated in 2020 and 2021. That's 60% of all mortgages in the United States were issued in a 2-year period at an average rate of 3%. About $1.5 trillion of those are fully transferable today. $7.5 trillion are Fannie Freddie, or jumbo. This is only the case as of 1982. When rates went from 2% to 17%, we wanted to bail out the banks, so we changed the law. Prior to 1982, all loans were transferable, and this was the primary way of purchasing a home. But most people who purchased a home in 1981 are dead. And so as a result, we don't really think about it. There is an opportunity to be able to make a retroactive change in the seller servicing guideline, as is changed every day, to make it transferable. So I think, one of the things that Pomp and I probably agree upon is affordability is going to be the key message for a lot of folks in the future. I think Mom Donnie's victory in New York actually revealed that, right? Is like you just talked about affordability nonstop, and it was a winning message.
So in that scenario, do the banks like this? Like they're not getting to re-originate a loan at a higher interest rate, so what's their take?
So I would say there's a couple of things that incentivize people. Why do lenders work with us on assumptions, right? And why aren't more of these being done? So if you Google mortgage assumption, you'll often find people saying, hey, it might take 180 days, right? And why is this the case? Well, if you go out and, I'm sure if you think back to 2021, you were all getting calls from loan officers being like, hey, if you take out a new mortgage with me, I will get you closed in 2 weeks. And now those same people are like, it may take 3 to 6 months, but I'll let you know. So how can this be the case? Well, when you take on a new mortgage, you pay 2% of the amount to the loan officer. When you get a mortgage assumption, the fees are capped at $1,800. And so as a result, you get treated with an underwriter or a processor instead of a loan officer. The key distinction being loan officers are more sales-oriented. So they're very incentivized to be able to get you over the finish line. You're like, I can't find the pay stub. They're like, let me jump on a Zoom, help you download the pay stub from Gusto. I'll upload it for you personally. And then all of a sudden, if you're doing an assumption, which is a lower price transaction, they're like, I don't know, you should Google what a pay stub is. So it's just the way that it works, right? It's not that complex. So then you go to these servicers and you're like, hey, you should really do this. A, because it's the law, and B, because I'll email you every day if you don't do it. After harassing a bunch of people, I grew to learn there's a way to make it in their incentive, which is twofold. One, mortgage servicers are compensated largely on mortgage servicing rights, which means every time you make a mortgage payment, they clip 25 basis points of that as their own revenue. Now, if you're a servicer, you can just keenly ask them, hey, would you rather that loan gets paid off and sent away to somebody else, or would you rather that revenue stream keeps coming in? And almost all of them will tell you they'd rather that revenue stream keeps coming in. And especially in a time where most non-bank lenders have both servicing and origination, many of the smart folks in the industry right now are short originations and long servicing, meaning they want to continue to collect the revenue stream on the servicing rights. They don't really think there's a bunch of opportunity to originate new mortgages. And I tell them, like, your fight is not with me, your fight is with the Federal Reserve. I'm just here to help you see a solution, which is you can continue to collect payments on the mortgages that already exist. And why would you want that to be sent away elsewhere? So when you include the mortgage servicing right value, as well as the ability to originate a second mortgage to the borrower, because they're going to be, ideally taking on some equity gap financing to fill the gap, the transaction ends up being worth north of $10,000 to a mortgage lender. So then they love it. But they haven't really thought about this as strategically as we have. And so when we have an opportunity to sit down with someone and tell them why it's in their interest to collect the mortgage servicing right, issue a second mortgage, and by the way, maintain customer loyalty, I think a lot of them come around because mortgage servicers have the most misunderstood asset in the world, which is a touch point with the consumer every single month, forever, until they leave that home. And they don't utilize it, and I think they should.
If I have a low mortgage rate, not only can I sell my house with the rate attached, but you've also created a way for me to monetize my low interest rate. How does that work?
Yeah, so sellers can get a premium for their home sale now because, we find that typical consumer saves, instead of getting a $3,000 monthly payment, they get a $1,500 monthly payment or a $2,000 monthly payment. You're going to save $1,000 to $1,500 a month. They might be willing to give you an additional 10 to 15K up front. If they're not willing to do that, sometimes what we facilitate for these folks is actually the ability to split the difference. So let's say your mortgage payment is $1,000, and if I was to take out a new mortgage at prevailing rates, I would pay $2,000. I'll just give you $500 a month. So we'll split the savings, is what we call it. And so that ends up being helpful too to get people to be excited about it.
Hold on, back up, just so people get this. You say it like it's like everyone knows how this works, but this is important. So the first thing that you guys launched with is a product where if I have a low interest rate, I can sell my home, the mortgage goes with it. You likely will pay me more for the house. But now it's your problems, essentially. You've got my mortgage. I don't know anything about it. I'm not paying attention. I might not even remember your name a year later, and we're off to the races. This second product that you guys have is I basically can build a revenue stream off of you. So I own my house. I've got a low mortgage rate. It's $1,000 a month is the payment, and I say, I think that you're willing to pay anything below $2,000 because if you got to get a new mortgage, you'll pay $2,000. So I can actually set the interest rate and say, I'll give you my house that you're going to buy. I'll also let you assume my mortgage, but rather than $1,000, you're going to pay me $1,500, and the difference of the $1,000 going to the bank and the $500 comes to me. That $500 a month, I've now built myself basically a residual income stream off of a mortgage I don't even own anymore. I'm not responsible for anymore.
Exactly.
That shit sounds awesome.
We should hire Pomp for our marketing team, But yeah, so Pomp put it excellently. In a nutshell, it's basically, let's say you have a 3% mortgage and market is a 6% mortgage. You sell the consumer, like the subsequent buyer who's going to come into your home, a 4.5% mortgage. And so you get some of the savings, they get some of the savings, and you built a passive income stream.
All right, now let's get a little bit deeper into this game. Why don't people just go buy a bunch of the assumable mortgages and then turn around and resell those homes and just mark up the mortgages and then just build the stream?
I think that's possible. I would love for more people to know about it. You know, I think more people have to know about it for that to be the case. It's just clearly evident in practice. So if you go to Zillow, which is the primary way that consumers see homes today, and you pull up a major metro like Houston or Dallas, and you use the keyword search function to find homes with an assumable mortgage, you'll see maybe 2 or 3 results. And why is that the case? Well, because no seller knows whether or not their loan type is a marketing or positioning advantage. Like, who would sit around and think about this? Life is hard enough, you know? And so nobody knows that their loan is assumable and that it can be a marketing advantage. And so nobody on the buying side thinks to search for it. So what we did is we actually pulled down all of the listings that are eligible to be sold and are listed for sale. And then we cross-pollinated it with all the mortgage records in America to identify every loan, what the remaining balance is, and what the rate is. So we can help you see, you can buy Pomp's home for 2.5% rate and get a $1,500 monthly payment instead of a $3,000 monthly payment. And so we were the first people to do that. I would love for everyone to be going around reselling their mortgages, but more people have to do it for that to be the case. So we'd love for more people to know that this is even possible.
What is the partnership with Opendoor? It's like kind of a full circle moment for you. You know, you work there now. Now you're on the same level with Kaz, saying, "Hey, let's do a deal."
Well, Kaz has 1,100 employees. So I don't know if that's quite the case, but I am
down from 1,400.
Yeah, that's true. I'm very impressed by what Opendoor has done. You know, I spent a large part of my life at that company, and the folks who started that company actually put me in business here. And so Eric Wu, who's the founder and CEO of that company, and Keith, who's now back as the chairman of the board, both of them are on the board at Roam. So I'm very grateful for everything they've done for me. And I'm also grateful for what they've done for Opendoor, because I was a longtime shareholder all the way from $32 a share to 50 cents. And, you know, that is a unique experience to go through in your life, I would say.
So you have conviction.
Yeah, I have conviction. And so the partnership with Opendoor is basically like, look, you know, you come to Opendoor and we're like, you want a cash offer? And what I found is that if I polled people who had like a 7% mortgage, they were like 80% likely to sell their home to Opendoor. And if you had a 2% mortgage, you were like 10% likely to sell your home to Opendoor. It's not like rocket science, right? Basically, there's an inverse correlation between the rate you have and your likelihood to get a cash offer, or accept a cash offer, rather. And so we can reverse this dynamic, because the most misunderstood thing about Opendoor is the value of the company is not in the homes. The value of the company is in the seller funnel, right? It's like, same thing as servicers are misunderstood. They misunderstand their own business, actually. It's actually about the touch points that they have. Opendoor is about sellers. And so if you have a lot of sellers coming every month because they want to be able to see what the value of the home would be if they sold it, and some portion of them don't like getting a cash offer, well, they can list their home. And why would they list their home with an Opendoor agent vis-a-vis their mother, brother, and cousin? Well, because Opendoor knows uniquely that your home has a loan that can be transferable, and that agent can help you get more for the home sale. So that's it. 1 of 3 sellers who come to Opendoor will be eligible. There's millions of sellers who come, and we're going to help them, you know, become aware that they have an assumable mortgage. And in doing so, if they work with an Opendoor agent, they can get more for their home sale.
Talk about this idea of affordability being like the most important thing in politics, but also probably society moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of folks who live in New York are probably shocked that Mamdani is mayor, but I think it's probably not shocking if you spend 10 minutes talking to anyone at a bar today. You know, like the number one thing that most people in life care about is affordability in housing, in transportation, in groceries. Literally the only thing that matters is affordability. And the number of ideas around this concept are extremely limited, because it would hurt the pockets of other people who are on the other side of the trade. And so I think I'm uniquely one of the people who's actually willing to make things more affordable, and hopefully we can build a big company around it, right? And so the way I think of this is that we can make housing drastically more affordable, and the extent to which this is a bipartisan issue is not to be understated. So I think you will see, for instance, the Republicans learn a lot from the victory that Zoran had, and you know, President Trump's deputy chief of staff, James Blair, went on the record and said that, you know, he won because of affordability, and this will largely be a big thing that we care about. And I think they're smart for that. And I think the Democrats should talk more about affordability. And I think we should actually build solutions to make things more affordable. And we should talk more openly about, like, are these things that are tractable, right? Like the issues you see being floated around, it's like, Okay, let's change the zoning codes. Great, I'll be dead before that actually happens, you know? I think you should just look at what are solutions that we can do in the next 2 to 5 or 10 years. What we are working on, I really believe, is one of the key levers that we can pull that is not inflationary and can drastically improve the monthly payment for a typical consumer, which is, by the way, the key part of the issue. It's not about down payments. I think down payments are actually pretty good for most people. The median down payment in America right now is about 20%. It's mostly about monthly payments where people get priced out. And that's the crux of the issue that people find it hard to wrap their head around because we've just built a mental model around dispersing money through monthly payments or through subsidizing the cost of construction. Very few people have ever thought about, well, the guy makes 90 grand a year, so unless we can give him like literally a 50K raise, he's not gonna be able to afford this monthly payment. How do we reduce the cost of that monthly payment? That's the key crux of the issue in housing that we need to focus on. And I welcome other ideas on it, but I think we probably have the best idea of how to solve it.
So it's also not a Democrat or Republican thing. They both, Trump and Mamdani, have won recently on affordability. I think Trump more so leaned into inflation, but it was still an affordability argument, and same thing with Mamdani. And so as you guys look at this, how do you decipher a difference between, let's say, like a New York City, where affordability, there's a lot of renting, there's a lot of like co-ops and things that just are, kind of intervention in a market versus, I think in Atlanta you guys have a ton of listings there, and that seems a little bit more like a free market where some of this stuff is resonating with people.
Yeah, actually what's unique about the Assumability opportunity is given it's focused on government mortgages, a lot of you who, if you live in the Upper West Side and have a $5 million condo, it's probably not assumable. And I actually,
JP Morgan's not assuming stuff.
Well, I think it's because they got sued out of the business, but yeah. So look, I think a lot of the mortgages that we tend to see are assumable are in the states that have the most liquidity. So Georgia, Arizona, Texas, Colorado, Illinois, Florida, the big markets where you see a lot of housing turnover. That's largely where we're focused and where we see a lot of the consumer interest in. We'd love to build opportunity in New York. We just don't have mortgages that are fully transferable in the city of New York.
Now, when you think moving forward, what else can you guys do to help kind of attack this problem? When you get into assumable car loans or other kind of assumable loans, or you stick with real estate and kind of go deeper on that problem?
Yeah, I'll give you something I think is funny and people don't expect. I never actually cared about assumable mortgages. If I did, I would have called the website assumablemortgages.com. That would have been a lot better for SEO. Instead, I called the company Roam because really what I cared about was economic and geographic mobility. I think economic mobility is probably the most powerful force for good in the world that exists, and very few people think about it because it's abstract to think about. And so what I cared about was making it possible for people to be able to move, regardless of what happens with the 10-year treasury yield. I think it's inane that, every day people wake up and they read CNBC and they're like, the 10-year went up, the 10-year went down, mortgage ads went up, mortgage ads went down. If you fast forward 50 years, the world will not be constructed this way. So what I'm mostly interested in is breaking the chain between the 10-year treasury yield and whether or not you decide to have an additional child. And the link there is that if you go from a 2-bed, 2-bath in 2020 to a 3-bed, 2-bath, you're not paying a 20 or 30% monthly payment increase. You're paying a 300 to 400% monthly payment increase. So Assumability was the first idea I saw where I was like, we can make a market out of this, and it gets to the premise of what we're interested in. But there's other ideas I have that I'm interested in as well. But that's the crux of what we care about. So the notion of Roam was about creating mobility regardless of what happens with the macro environment, so you don't have to read every Fed presser, which should have nothing to do with your life as like a school teacher in Birmingham, and yet people read it obsessively. And so that's what I care about, and that's what I want to have discussions about. So if you have product ideas around that, I'd love to hear it, but we have some as well. And so, yeah, that's the focus of the company.
He's very receptive to product ideas. All right. Where can we send people to find the website?
The company's website is withroam.com, WITHROAM.com. When I started the company, I would cold call people, and I would tell them I'm Raunaq from Roam, and everybody would be like, you're who from where? And so it's Roam, R-O-A-M. I didn't really think about homonyms when I named the company, but now I do a lot. And you can also email me. I respond to every email I get. My email is raunaq@withroam.com. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much.